Okay.
Oh, isn't he is he gonna pop on Zoom?
Committee meeting of the Public Safety Committee and ask for the roll call.
Sorry. Chairman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller is not here yet, and Alderwoman O'Neill.
Thank you. We have a quorum. On number 2B, the approval of the amendments to the agenda. I have one thing to move and consolidate, not to eliminate or add. But I'd like to take topic 8C and 9D, which are the K-9 unit update and the review evaluation of the ECDC and service expectations, and fold those into the larger presentation that is currently on 8D regarding Brentwood Bound. And could I get a motion to go ahead and do that, just to make that consolidation?
Second.
Second, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Make that change. Any other changes? The agenda will stand with that one change. And we have, at this point, we have 2 points in this meeting for citizen comments, and we did this strategically so that if people want to talk about a particular issue before we get a chance to discuss it, they're more than welcome to do that. You've got to just identify yourself. I'll give you 3 minutes at the microphone. Is there anybody that wants to speak at this time? There is another citizen comment section towards the end of this meeting, number 10A. Please.
Thank you. My name is Dan Glass, 8506 Henrietta. And for some of you, you may expect what I'm about to say about citizen comments regarding golf carts. So I understand that's an agenda item. And I just wanted to let you know that we bought a golf cart at the beginning of last summer. We've had it for 1.5 years now, and our family really enjoys using it in Brentwood. We take it basically everywhere: Walgreens, the bank, Tillis Park, the pool, around the neighborhood to the preschool. We take the kids to school, and we use it even throughout the winter. So as you consider ordinances or laws regarding golf carts, I would appreciate your consideration in the fact that I don't necessarily, your comment on Facebook the other day, Alderman Plufka, regarding safety concerns, I totally agree that we should have a baseline for safety. But my overarching concern was with regard to registration and perhaps licensing. And I think that if Brentwood took that stance, which I believe is similar to Clayton ordinances, it could cause a barrier to entry for people who want to use them for environmental concerns or reasons like that, because then you start getting into registration fees and the hassle of going to the DMV and things of that nature. So our golf cart has all the safety features that one would expect you would need to remain safe driving it around the neighborhood. We have windshield, seat belts, lights, turn signals, horn, and we had very little safety concerns when we drive it around the neighborhood. We haven't been hit by a car. We have not even had any close calls. I would say, as you consider the use of golf carts, perhaps even consider opening up some of the paths for limited use so that golf carts wouldn't need to go out onto Brentwood Boulevard or onto Hanley Road. For example, I could not get from Henrietta to the police station for a safety inspection if that was required, because I would have to go out onto Hanley to do that. So I guess my ask of the committee would be, if you do provide an ordinance, just provide basic safety features, don't require registration and licensing, and consider opening some of the paths for limited use so that we can access places that we wouldn't normally be able to access without getting on main roads. For example, from Henrietta to Oak Tree Park, if I could use a portion of the path down by that Oak Tree Park parking lot near Brentwood Barbell, I wouldn't need to, go out onto Manchester, which I can't do because it's a state road. So anyway, those are my comments regarding golf carts. I think there's only probably 5 in Brentwood right now, out of a city of population of 8,000. So it might be best to remain silent on the matter as well until more golf carts are in use, and then we would have a better understanding of what those safety concerns would be as more people use golf carts. So thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else? Thank you. There we go. Section 4A is the city administrator report.
I have nothing.
Thank you. Number 5 is the report of committee chairs and aldermen. As the chairman, I do not have a report at this time. Alderwoman Sims?
No report.
Thank you. Alderman Lockmuller is not with us yet.
No.
Alderwoman O'Neill? No report. Thank you. We have department reports, first from the police department.
Custis. Good evening.
Good evening.
We have a bit of a mixed bag report for you for the police department in terms of crime in the area. Good news is, year-to-date, we are down in crime compared to last year, which is, a little surprising considering COVID was still around last year. There were some high-profile incidents that occurred in the last 4 weeks, and that we'll cover and talk about a little bit. With regard to the closure of Manchester, and in particular the neighborhoods east of Brentwood and between Brentwood and Hanley in particular that we've heard a lot about, in May the officers stopped over 300 vehicles just in that area. So there were a lot of tickets written, but there were a lot of warnings given as well. On June 11th, we had a little morning get-together. Some of you stopped by. We were able to talk to the area residents there and really go through what they considered were their specific problems that we could help them with. And I think that helped a lot. It let them have a voice as to what they thought we could do better. They were generally happy, I think is a good way of putting it, with our service from the police department so far. But there is a lot of traffic being dumped in those neighborhoods right now, so we continue to be in that area. Officer Alex Wilcox has been detailed at that area since the closure of Manchester.
The department had a total of 30 people there. That was incredible.
At that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Of note, in that particular area, of that boxed area, when we took a look at the accident reports, overall, accidents only rose by 2 in that since the closure compared to last year. So at least that's what's been reported to us in terms of reports written. So we are not going to say that someone called the police every time a mirror got knocked off their car, because that doesn't happen. But what has been reported to us, there were 2 additional accident reports, which I was pretty surprised at. I thought it would have been higher than that, considering the amount of traffic that was weaving in and out of those narrow streets. We, in response to the school shooting in Texas, I prepared a letter to the public that was put on our social media site by Janet. We felt like it was necessary to put something out with regard to how we train, how we respond, and really what our rules and protocols are around active shooter events. As you know, we've done trainings for businesses in Brentwood. Since I've been here as chief, we've done trainings for them. That's an ongoing process. Sergeant Gibson is trained in helping people through workplace violence cases. You would probably think, well, it really doesn't affect Brentwood all that much. But just last week, we had 3 of these cases, one of which involved a guy going to his car and getting a gun and shooting the gun at the back door of the business. These are coming up more frequently than before. And what we do is we get infused into the process with the business as early as we can, and we try and identify what the background is of the person they're concerned with. And then we do intervention tactics. And I'll just give you a quick story. Out of the 3 this week, one was a prior Target employee that was using social media to threaten people at Target who had terminated him. As it turns out, this particular person had some mental health issues. And instead of going the arrest route, we went a different route. We went to this guy's parents. And long story short, working with the parents, we were able to defuse this kid and made the people at Target much more at ease. And so those are the kind of things that we aim for in these workplace violence cases. Some of them require arrests. Some of them require us to go and actually sit at the business, which we actually are doing at a facility right now. So they are all a little different. Depends. What we see is how much we need to address and how strongly we need to do that is based on the circumstances. One of the cases that I was going to mention, and I don't know if you saw it, we had an 85-year-old woman that was robbed at Deerbergs on June 7th. If you heard about that case, we have it on video from the surveillance cameras up there. She's shocked. She's done. She's putting her stuff in the car. Car pulls up. One guy gets out of the car and knocks her down, takes her purse. She gets mildly injured, and very lucky she didn't get hurt bad. She did fall and hit her head, but she didn't get seriously injured. In that case, our detectives at this point have subpoenaed. They stole her purse, her checks, her credit cards, and all those things. We have several leads going right now. They cashed checks from that woman. The detectives have subpoenaed those records and the video surveillance tapes of the people that cashed the check. So there's a high probability they're going to clean that case up. So out of the crime that we saw for the last 6 weeks, that was the highest profile case that we saw outside the scope of our normal retail theft issues and some assaults that occurred. We had a nasty assault about 3 hours ago now from a Metrolink case that went into Subway, back to Metrolink after he stole something, and he beat a guard and split his head open. And so which kind of segues into my next topic, and that is the Metrolink issues that we face. We continue to face them. We track what Metrolink is giving us in Brentwood. That doesn't count Richmond Heights, doesn't count Maplewood, where the other stops are. For the last year, we've had 38 arrests directly related to people that came here from Metrolink stops. That's just arrests. There are tons of other calls that are generated for police service for things like peace disturbances and suspicious people, people begging. So the 38 cases that we told you about that are arrest reports, those are folks that we actually caught. That doesn't represent the people that came here and stole. That just represents the people that were caught doing it. So it continues to be a challenge in our retail area. It's the #1 threat we have in our retail by far. And we continue to work with the county police department that is responsible for safety and security on there. Allied Barton guards work there as well. So we have a good relationship with them. But at the end of the day, these folks are getting off the train and they're coming into Brentwood and they're doing what they want. So oftentimes the county police and those guards assist us on the apprehension piece, which is what happened today. With regard to our flock cameras, we've been giving you updates on flock. At this point, year to date, we've had 38 hits on the flock cameras for cars wanted for felonies, including many of them are stolen cars. So that's very successful when it comes to early intervention and things like that. What has happened as a result of that, however, is we also have our officers flooding the area looking for these cars when it happens, and they find them. So what we have seen is an escalation of felony fleeing events from our police officers. So some of these have occurred at night. Some of them have been of cars wanted for robberies and armed robberies and carjacking events. A lot of them are just listed as stolen cars who are out doing other crime. So the flock cameras have really been an assistance, particularly on that north end of town up by our retail area. We've had some, Bolo will back me up on this one, some changes from St. Louis County on the flock cameras about where we put them, putting them on easements, put them on county property. It's been quite the challenge to get, but I think we've got them figured out at this point. So we should have 7 of them up and running, I think, in the next 60 days. And they are helpful to the crime reduction strategies that we have. In terms of our crime report for the police department, that's all I had. I'd be happy to answer any questions relative to that.
Committee have any questions?
If a business in Brentwood wanted to get some of the training in terms of the actor shooter or work violence, how might, before something bad happens, could they just contact the police department? How
Yeah.
would they go about that?
Sergeant Gibson's been trained in doing it, and I enjoy getting involved in it as well. I did a lot of these trainings prior to coming here in Brentwood. So Chris is the one to contact, and depending on who the entity is, because we do them for small businesses all the way up to larger corporate environment stuff. So, but there's a specific path to trying to do this as best you can in terms of handling these people. And really, the quicker they have the police department with them to do it, the better. So Chris is the guy who, if you have somebody in mind, Chris is the guy that will meet with them and then go from there. He'll do a training with them. He'll do a walkthrough of their facility. He'll talk to them about best practice and response. And he'll tell them what we will do as a police department for them in terms of quietly doing an background investigation on whoever they're worried about and how significant of a threat could that person be. And then from there, make a decision on what path you're gonna take to address it. And as I said, it may be, if it's significant, we may get very involved in it. We may go take the guy into custody and interview him based on his threats. You know, we may have an officer assigned there if we really feel that it's a threat. So just depends on the details. But Chris is the resource for that.
And if someone just a business just wanted to know best practices, situational awareness, they could do that too.
Yeah, and we actually got one cheaters farm that they could keep. So yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to help them. We put that on the, we've done open seminar, and we had a good response. We did one about a year and a half ago. We had a good response. We had a lot of businesses show up for it. Quite frankly, the training that we're doing, people are paying a lot of money for privately. So consultants will come in and do that same thing, but really we're able to do it, and we're glad to do it for the businesses in Brentwood.
Okay. In terms of the stops that you've been making on Eulalie and Rosalie and Swim Club, and observationally, do you have any kind of guesstimate breakdown between Brentwood residents and non-Brentwood residents?
Yeah, when we first started doing it, the first 3 weeks or so, it was probably around 50-50, which we were surprised by that. And there's been some messaging going out, and the neighbors are yelling at each other, and it's dropped dramatically since then. And I would tell you it's about 10% right now, roughly.
10% of the people
Brentwood
you're stopping.
residents, yeah.
So the majority of people going through
It's gotten
don't
much
live in the
better in
area.
that regard, yeah.
And I will comment, I drive that area a lot because I get a lot of phone calls about that area. And I was, happened to just be driving by a swim club, and sure enough, there was a police officer right at White where the temporary access point is no more. So I was, and that was, I don't know, mid-morning. So I was pleased to see that.
I will say, Alderwoman O'Neill, you asked us to look at High School Drive coming down, especially on the hill coming into your area. Large majority of those are your residents there inside Brentwood Forest. So, that's one of the things that we were going to ask you to do is really, if you can get messaging out to your peeps that we are going to be sitting there and. Yeah. We're trying to do it an easier or better way if we can. I think once people get the messaging, I think that people have gotten the messaging in the Eulalie area, that Rosalie, that to slow down. At least our folks have. It appears, because it's probably not even 10% right now. It's mostly people coming in, and a lot of times they're rush hour, early or late rush hour people.
In terms of the shoplifting, Metrolink, the people that you pick up for what I think of as retail theft, retail crimes, do most of them come from the Metrolink, or do they? I would have thought they needed a getaway car. Crime. I'm not a very good.
No, I don't know the exact number of percentage of who comes in and steals. We have a lot of people that come in cars. Organized theft people almost always are going to come in a car, and we have those in Brentwood. We have people that come in and literally load up carts full of things, whatever store they're in, Ulta, whoever it may be. Wheel it out to the car, throw it in the car, and go. Those people are always going to be in a car. The Metrolink thieves are more your low end, stealing liquor. Today, the guy stole the tip jar from Subway. So that's the kind of thievery that you're looking at from the Metrolink folks. They tend to be semi-homeless or homeless, either one. And they're very transient. They come often. And we, at this point, trespass them in a lot of these stores, which makes them arrestable for us. But the honest truth is, if they don't reach the level of booking, so if they're not wanted, if they're wanted, they go to jail. If they have 2 prior convictions for stealing, they go to jail. So there are criteria that we use to formally book people for stealing a tip jar or stealing a bottle of liquor. If you steal a bottle of liquor, often you're just given a summons and released. Often that means, how did you get here? Well, I took the Metrolink. Our officers physically take them to the Metrolink and put them back on and say, go home. So that's, that revolving door is a problem because there's no bite to the system at all for those folks. This is what it is. I mean, I'm just telling you where we are in the world today. People think that you get caught stealing, you automatically go to jail, and it's simply not even close to being the case at this point.
That's all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? I have a couple.
Yes, sir.
Given the success of that initial meeting with the residents of Eulalia and Rosalie and in that area, and considering the fact that we're probably looking at another 6 or 7 weeks with the bridge being down,
Right.
Is another meeting like that planned, maybe later in July?
Yeah, Angie, Major Hawkins and I had talked about that. Certainly can. I think it was well received. To me, it's a much better feel than we usually do coffee with a cop. And it's during the days, it's early in the morning. This was on Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I think that's why the crowd was good. And I think, people can come out, take a walk, get a donut, and it's just easier. I think it's a good mix. So yes, we can.
The other question I'm going to ask you is it's asking for some speculation on your part. Mm-hmm. We have a scooter permit discussion on our agenda a little bit later. Given the thought about the notion that we may be in some point in the future looking at distribution of scooters in our community, could that, in your opinion, have an impact on the felony fleeing problem that you're talking about coming from Metrolink?
Well, Bill and I had this discussion earlier today. For me personally, I don't understand the scooter application in Brentwood as strongly as you may in other places. I don't know where people are going to ride a scooter necessarily. Right. We're not a big metropolitan area where you're running around in extended areas, and the birds are to anyone's advantage other than people that are using them, perhaps maybe to run around and steal. I don't know. I can tell you this: the city of St. Louis and the downtown area mightily struggled with people that were stealing the birds, that weren't paying, that used them for nefarious reasons, whatever that may be. And they got rid of them, as you know. You probably saw the news. So are we going to have similar problems if we take them into Brentwood? Maybe. I don't know. It might turn out to be a good program. E-bikes are another option. I've ridden e-bikes. I think they're great. But those e-bikes are different. They have longer range. We have paths to ride an e-bike on. There's places to ride them that are applicable to our little city of Brentwood, where I just really don't see the bird application well. Maybe it's there. I don't see it though.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Nope. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Fire Department, Chief Cottrell.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Have a few items posted for the department report, and I'm just going to jump to the very last item that's posted for tonight's meeting, so for June. And not to read it word for word, but just give an overview of our training update. We've been very busy since we've met last. In fact, the month of May, our training hours were double what our monthly goal is. So our folks have been very busy, engaged, and working with our partners in the region. So it's been very positive, including yesterday, our last company officer completed training with St. Louis County Police on our the active shooter tabletop scenario with the county tactical team. So we do that every other year where our officers go and work with them on a command and control perspective, controlling the resources, commanding the resources. So that's the scenario we did this year, and it's a good opportunity working with our partners. We have in 3 weeks, we have our visit from ISO, and we are going to give them a whole bunch of data in 3 weeks that they will begin reviewing, and should be, according to the timeline last 5 years ago, around December, we should have a report on our current rating. So we anticipate to lower our rating based off improvements that have been made in Brentwood. Brentwood Bound creates an impact. Our fire marshal creates a significant impact, and our training records. So those three are going to create a big swing for us that we feel will secure a 2 rating. So.
Could you explain just for the public, everybody
Yes.
that might be listening, what
So-
that means?
Yes, each community is rated by ISO, Insurance Services Organization. Some insurance companies pull information from ISO, others may not. It's their choosing. But that fire service rating, the scale is 1 being absolute best, 10 being absolute worst. And so we're currently at a 3. Historically, Brentwood has always been at a 4. Our last rating, we reduced it to a 3, and we anticipate reducing it to a 2.
What percentage of municipal fire departments do you speculate, or do you know, or have a rating like that?
I should know that. I do not know
Okay.
that.
I
There
don't mean
are,
to put you on the spot.
yeah,
but-
there are very few in St. Louis region that have a 1 rating. A few more have 2. Most are in the 3 or 4 range.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're in the norm for our regional partners. 2 will just set us apart a little bit more.
Very good.
Just a nice comment about the fire marshal. Fire Marshal Hammer, which I don't think we've formally introduced at Public Safety, just we had to cancel the last meeting. He is hitting the pavement every day and making a difference. And to the point where a business owner actually reached out to the city administrator last week commenting about his work. And that was meaningful. I'm very thankful that they did that and that BOLA shared that with us all. So we've concluded our interview process. We anticipate hopefully tomorrow or by the end of the week extending a conditional offer to an applicant to fill an immediate opening that we have. This is impactful because every crew is short right now due to retirement, a couple of injuries, and 1 illness that's serious. We are short 4 people currently, and we're in vacation season. So we're monitoring the overtime budget. We are still under 50%, which is good being at this point in June, but I'm monitoring that closely. We are using those funds right now. So I looked to have 1 captain, and we'll be having surgery next week. So he won't return until some point in August. And the other 2 are too early to tell. So. Just a quick note on our monthly performance measures and just in transparency. So we are looking at this differently this year. As I've highlighted in previous meetings, our response times, we're measuring at the 90th percentile. So 90% of the time, are we arriving 6 minutes, 20 seconds after somebody picks up the phone and calls 911? And we missed the mark a little bit for the month of May. We completely attribute it to our training hours. and our folks being tied up in training, stopping that activity, and then responding to the emergency. As you know, we run most of our calls during daytime business hours. That's when we also perform our training, so it's just compression during that time. Our new ambulance, it's 1 year old. This month, we put it in service a year ago. The crews noticed a little bit of paint bubbling. This is significant because they're fixing it, of course, at no cost to the city, but we're not going to have that unit for about 3 weeks. So just wanted to share that information. The final piece on my report is EMS billing. So we participated, Chief Curtin brought forward in 2019 for us to participate in the Missouri GEMT program, where we receive reimbursements from Missouri Medicaid on Medicaid patients that we transport. Participating in that program required a mandatory audit by the state. That audit has been completed. They did find a discrepancy in Brentwood's report, and it's tied to, I'm going to use the abbreviations, a little shorter version, MO-MSAC. So it's an additional tax on Medicaid patients that Brentwood started collecting in 2009. We were not aware. I was not aware. When that report was filed, Brentwood was not aware we were receiving those funds. It's been updated. Our cost report has been resubmitted to the state. There's no cost out of our pocket. It was the discrepancy. If it does cost Brentwood any money, it will come out of future disbursements. So just wanted to provide that information. I have the attached of frequently asked questions summary on that. So
Right.
that is all on my report.
Okay, anybody in the committee have any questions? All right, Chief, thank you.
Thank you.
Dan, I know you've got something in old business, but do you have just a general report?
I can go through the items if you want.
Okay,
There's just a few of them.
okay.
Okay. For the York Village, which I know that appears later on, the streetlights, right before the meeting, I had received the easement descriptions and the drawing with it as well. So I marked up one of them. It just had a few corrections. I sent it back to TWM, and I'm going to work on preparing the rest of the text with those three. And then whenever I get the replacement one, I'll put it together with it and then go deliver them and get those signed. So there's an update there. And then our data collectors, we should receive those by Friday. I got a confirmation from FedEx that they're on a truck and they're bound for St. Louis. We delivered those, gosh, it was probably like probably third week of April when we sent those off to be rebuilt, with 5G. So should be getting those back. And then on White Avenue, I don't know if anybody's received any concerns, complaints, but last Friday I put a chain across that access road because people were moving the barricades. I'm assuming they were residents. I don't know that, but I just know that the barricades were moved and it was a concern. So we came up with a temporary solution, which is just to put chains across there with barricades. And Public Works has the padlocks, and I mentioned it to the contractor. Whenever they do their road restoration, they'll want that chain dropped so they can drive vehicles out, but that's another, issue that they'll bring to the committee and board level several months from now. And the only other thing I had, which maybe somebody knows the answer, Manchester Road, they were supposed to do that work east of Hanley on eastbound Manchester. I haven't driven through there, so I don't know if they've commenced that and shut down eastbound.
I don't know.
Okay. And that was pretty much it.
Anybody have any questions from the committee? I do have a couple questions. So you, the Luth contractor on White, you believe that did they give you any sense of when they're going to be done?
White Avenue, they said they would be done with tomorrow. And then they'll put the signs that were on White over on Rosalie. So then starting probably next week, Monday, Rosalie would be closed in that same area, like by the post office. so they can put pipe along the southern edge of Rosalie from the post office heading east, maybe 5 homes east of the post office.
And when,
But then they'll reopen it when they're done at the end of each day, so it's passable with plates over it.
and then when, did they give you an idea of when they would commence the resurfacing of White?
Not until they're done with Rosalie, White, and then they still have to do Bridgeport. None of the work is done or even started on Bridgeport.
Okay.
So, I mean, realistically, it probably won't be until, I would guess, late July, early August.
And so the chain will stay in place, that road on White will stay in place, or that temporary road will stay in place, because they'll utilize that in the resurfacing part of it.
Right,
the
they
end of
did
it?
say that, so if they're pouring concrete, they want, unidirectional circulation of vehicles. So everybody would be pointed eastbound, they'll pour the concrete along the ditch line and head out.
Got it.
But we need some sort of plan and schedule for that, and then we would bring it back whenever that's supposed to take place.
Okay.
Because right now, they're not to use it, nobody's supposed to use it, residents or the contractor, only first responders.
And with regard to Manchester Road and the replacement of the bridge at Hanley, any sense from the contractors there?
They're still on schedule. I know we have a weekly meeting, a standing meeting. We didn't have it on Monday because of the holiday, but we did have a meeting with KCI and MoDOT, and it's end of August.
Okay, end of August is being
That's
the
what
time
they've
that
always
would
targeted, and
reopen.
that's where we
Right.
still are, is end of August.
Okay,
So
Okay.
that's a good thing.
thank you for that. Anybody have any other questions? Thank you, Dan.
Yep, thanks.
The next item is the consent addenda, and the only thing on it are the meeting minutes. Everybody had a chance to look at them. Does anybody want to offer any changes? Hearing none, the minutes will stand as submitted. 8A is the proposed legislation regarding the operation of golf carts. I want to get this discussion going, but because of the comment that was made in the public comment section, it was a very salient comment, and I want to start it off by what you've got in your material are actually 2 proposals. One is a flat-out prohibition. The first 3 sections, it's marked in your materials 340.230 A, B, and C. It just calls for the flat-out prohibition of golf carts. In my opinion, that completely violates Missouri Statute 304.029, which says, Part 1, notwithstanding any other law to the contrary, low-speed vehicles may be operated on the highway in the state if it meets the requirements of this section, and then it proceeds to tell you what the requirements are. It seems to me that in the light of that, any flat-out prohibition of golf carts would violate that statute and would probably be, the ordinance would probably be struck. And again, that's my opinion, but it's pretty plain in the statute. The second point, which was also mentioned in our comments, had to do with registration and titling. In that same section, 304.029, it says that low-speed vehicles shall be exempt from the requirements of Section 307, or Chapter 307, Section 350, Chapter 307, Section 402, for purposes of titling and registration. That seems very clear to me as well, that Brentwood, if they were to include in any ordinance that somehow required titling and registration, that it would violate that state statute. The last section of this same statute says, nothing in this section shall prevent county or municipal governments from adopting more stringent local ordinances governing low-speed vehicle operation if the governing body or the county or municipality determines that such ordinances are necessary in the interest of public safety. That clearly suggests that we are allowed to regulate the manner in which and the places in which golf carts can operate within our city. And so with that in mind, I wanted to open it up to conversation with regard to this topic, so. go
Are
ahead.
you, so when you're talking about you're talking about the draft policy?
Yeah.
So I don't recall if you were at this is the 3rd time we've taken up
Yeah,
this.
it strikes
you-
me that the two were smashed together.
Well, and I don't remember if you were at the last meeting, and so my recollection
not have
of I don't think you were. So we looked at a bunch of ordinances,
Okay.
and the thought coming out of setting apart golf carts versus low-speed vehicles was if you thought of a golf cart that was on a true course and was on a path, that is not safe for road travel. And so we were attempting to set up a contrast of this kind of thing is not allowed because it doesn't have safety features. But we like the idea of incorporating the regulations from the CFR and the state of incorporating and actually break ourselves of the habit of calling them golf carts and saying low-speed vehicles are acceptable.
Okay.
If as they are defined by the CFR and also I think state law that incorporates that.
Right.
And we like standing on those shoulders because there were a number of safety features that were required to be called a low-speed vehicle. So that was the drafting approach of that, and I think that in some way, I don't have it in front of me, in some ways, in many ways tracked, I think, the Clayton ordinance. So it was just a way to short circuit saying low-speed vehicles as that's defined, because there are all sorts of safety features that I don't think anyone's really disputing those are, tail headlights, seatbelts, windshields, that kind of thing.
Right.
To set them apart. So it's not just, hey, I got this golf cart from, the country club I belong to up the road, and I just decided to joyride, to drive it through, because that kind of golf cart doesn't have a seatbelt, doesn't, so that was the contrast set up. And I actually kind of liked that approach because it clarified, I think, well, what is the kind of vehicle that would be allowed?
So as you say that, I was just confused. I was not seeing the differentiation between the phrase golf cart and the phrase low-speed vehicle. Obviously, they're different. Is there any way that we might make it clearer in that first section, that 230 section A, to say that we're talking about a golf cart, which is something quite different from what we describe as a low-speed vehicle?
I think that could certainly go into a preamble. I mean, but that is the sort of the design, the drafting approach. Like this type of vehicle is not, or a lawn chair that you've retrofitted into like water pool is not, is probably not altogether safe. That's the kind of thing, and really we don't want to call them golf carts. We want to call them low-speed vehicles, and the kind of, really I think the kind of vehicle that was described by Dan Glass, I think would qualify as a low-speed vehicle.
Right. Absolutely.
Rid of the term golf cart. It's going to happen. That's what people are going to call them, whether we say cart or whatever.
Low-speed vehicle.
In terms of writing a policy, if we say low-speed vehicle, that's one thing. But the vernacular is going to continue to be golf cart. So I think we need to recognize that. But as Alderwoman Sims was saying, having the basic safety factors is important. And if we can make sure that whatever is moving around our streets does have all of those, whether it's an annual check by the police or whoever, it doesn't have to be a huge state sticker or anything like that. Just a note that, yes, all those things are there and we trust that this is a safe vehicle to be using.
Well, the only thing that I see in that subsection A3 that's not already included in there and was actually mentioned by Dan in his comments is a horn. Is that something we would want to add?
I like Russ. I am not an expert on low-speed vehicles. I mean, I like the phrase because it's a term of art that has a definition set apart by the Code of Federal Regulations and the state Code of Regulations. And if it qualifies in that regard, then that vehicle ought to A-OK by us, with additional parameters. So that's the approach I like. I don't know, because a lot of people have given thought to low-speed vehicles. And I can't really remember, are horns allowed or not allowed as the definition of a low-speed vehicle as defined by the CFR
Oh, I don't
or
know.
the state equivalent?
Yeah, the only reference, well, there's two references. Yeah, you're right. So it said, so was just the only references to the codified regulations was the windshield and the lap belts.
Well, it also says in section 3, it says as used in this section, the term low-speed vehicle means the same as low-speed vehicle in section 304.029 RSMO and 49 SFR, section 571.3. So they're incorporating how those statutes define a low-speed vehicle.
Right, but they don't, those sections in the Missouri statute don't necessarily touch on safety elements. They have to do with the configuration, tires, engine, that kind of stuff. If you look at those, what they're referring to there.
Oh, so there's no requirement under those definitions that they have headlamps and front and rear signals and stop
Correct.
lamps?
So the safety requirements, let's see, it says it in here. Yeah, the only reference is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration standards and 49 CFR 571.500, which we do reference in our statute right at A2 of section 340.260. And then we go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
David,
Hey,
I just have a question.
hey, Steve. I didn't recognize you were up there. Yeah, please. I'm sorry.
Well, if we could go back where you were citing state statute.
Right.
So they were just addressing in that statute low speed vehicles, correct? They were not addressing golf carts.
They did not mention, it does not mention golf carts. It describes them as low-speed vehicles, right?
So as far as Alderwoman Sims was describing a golf cart straight off the course, we could still ban those if we saw fit
And I
without
think
violating.
I think that's right, and I think she went on to explain that was the reasoning behind the first three sections in
Right,
our,
it was
in
to
our,
set
in our
up the
materials.
contrast that, there is a type of golf cart that's not safe, I think, for road travel.
Yeah,
Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that.
okay, absolutely.
Thanks.
And welcome to the meeting. Sorry about that.
So were there
I've
safety,
just been hanging out.
Okay.
so are there safety features that are problematic in terms of, like, what was it? I guess I missed it.
I don't know. I don't think they are. I mean, it seems to me that the last part of our proposed statute, which is 340.280, I think the last sentence of section A should probably be struck. I don't think we can additionally impose registration when the statute says we can't.
What, and I love that I don't have to be the lawyer here, because that sounds, that sounds like a question for Kevin O'Keefe. God
Does.
bless him.
It is.
But is there, and I just don't know, are low-speed vehicles, are they registered? Like, not necessarily by us, but do they have a license, or do they, I don't have any.
They are
vehicle like
not-
this.
And I think primarily I don't think they are. Okay.
Differs by community. So in Eureka, where I live, you have to register them with the police department. Our recommendation would be that would be what we would do.
I mean, I think logically it makes sense. How else are you gonna enforce, how else are we gonna, are the police officers gonna know whether?
Well, and and if you look at subsection 4, there is a one-time inspection that requires you to have the police department check to see that all these things are on your vehicle, and you get a little sticker on your windshield. Presumably, the police department would take information as to who you are, where you live, and, that kind of thing, and have it and hold on to it.
There are cities that have a process that says every year your vehicle has to be touched again by an inspection. So, and I was discussing that with BOLA. we would be willing to have an officer certified for that inspection, and to this gentleman's complaint that he can't get to our police department in a low-speed vehicle, he's right, you can't. So it'd be, it'd be a good community touch for us. We'll just go to his house, probably take all 10 minutes for that trained officer to go through a safety checklist.
Right.
And then he'd get a sticker, and then, that's something that I think that would be easy for us to do, if that helps this process at all.
And I had other questions too. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I like that. Sounds like a solution to me. And because I don't, the measuring, to what extent are we going to have, are people going to do this? I have no idea. But that, if it's just a handful of people, I mean, I guess we can revisit if it's thousands. But what, I mean, I know, what we discussed, or did you want to comment or I cut you
No.
off?
Just listening.
Just as a point of clear, I think one of the things that came out of the last meeting was, so amongst others, so we don't control Manchester. The
Right.
county controls Brentwood. The county controls Hanley. Am I right? So, and as I understand it, low-speed vehicles are not allowed on those streets. Is that right?
And they can't drive faster than 30 miles an hour.
But you are able to go like a pedestrian would, perpendicular across.
Does
So if whatever we adopt, I'm looking at, the only street I can think of is Whitehall. What do you do if your if you have to necessarily, because I think McKnight is not, well, we control McKnight on our side,
Right.
but so.
No, but Dan brought it up in his comments that there's points in the city where
What is one to
practical
do?
matter, you're right, exactly.
Is that an easement by necessity or what? Or I honestly don't. What do we do about? I mean, I know there are, for probably a big chunk of it, we'll just like go down the block and circle back and come back. But
Yeah.
on those streets where that's not possible, what is
Can
one
we
to
throw
do?
in, one of the things we talked about was not having them on Hanley, but we also listed Litzinger, and that's been omitted from our prep materials today. The thought was, I think, west of Brentwood, not have
Well, what is the
the
speed?
coach.
The speed on Litzinger?
30.
30.
25. What is it? Which is it?
25, and the south side of Litzinger on that section's not ours anyway, that's in
Rock
Rock
Hill.
Hill, so
Yeah.
they're gonna have their own ordinances as well, so.
So by limiting it to 30 miles, or the max, setting it max, are we excluding any Brentwood controlled street? Like, can you go 40 miles, 35 miles an hour on any street in Brentwood?
Can't think of any residential streets where you can go higher than 25. Isn't it 25?
Yeah.
I think it's 50 on high school.
So
Touche.
that's not really a limit. Yeah. So
No, but it was just a way to doubly enforce.
no, I get it. I thought that maybe I could, as I sat here, I just didn't know how fast you could go on Litzinger, and I thought that might have been just a way to say like, and you can't drive on Litzinger, but it's not. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was one of the points of concern that we had.
So it seems to me that that there's three things that we need to maybe work on here. One is to perhaps make sure the differentiation between golf cart and low-speed vehicle and what the definition of those vehicles is hit home, and maybe that means an amendment to that 340.230 subsection A. Secondly, we need to come to some consensus on what roads are prohibited. I with all due respect, I don't know that I mean, I understand where you're coming from with regard to Litzinger. I don't know that I agree that Litzinger isn't, well, in any case, we can talk about that. But it's in 340.250 subsection C, there's a listing of roads, not by limitation, but just to specifically mention McKnight Road, Brentwood Boulevard, Hanley Road, and Manchester Road. And then it also talks about the fact that they cannot be operated on any sidewalk, multi-use path, pedestrian underpass, walkway, and then there's a whole host of little further definitions there. It seems to me that in a city like Brentwood, where you've got those dead-end streets and you've got those places where, you know, the only, excuse me, if you were to have a golf cart, the only way that you could use it is if you were able to figure out some way to, for a few feet or so, or for a section, to be able to operate on a, you know, a walking path or some other kind of way. I wonder if we ought to try to take a look at that, or
Have
whether,
it, like, something by
like an
necessity?
easement or
I don't
something.
know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like-
And I don't know if it would be something we could set out. We could actually put signs up that say, you know, as you're walking, this little section of path, you know, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here.
I like that idea because as Dan Glass pointed out, a bit of a trail might be useful.
Right.
But I don't want to meet a golf cart on a trail. I ride an e-bike and it's heavy. It's not as agile as my other bikes have been, and a golf cart is going to take up most of that trail. They do it at Creve Coeur Park already, and you have to get physically off that trail to get past
To
them.
let them get by. Yeah.
So it's endangering whoever else is coming past to try to get past those. So I can understand why a small section of it might be useful, but I wouldn't want someone to give that as permission to just go joyriding down the trail in a cart.
Maybe what we can do is, I mean, we can leave this discussion here, and I'll agree, I mean, to look at a map and try to figure out, and Dan, maybe with your help, you could email me some places where you know, or you think
Yeah,
you
these
know
pressure
that.
points. like-
Exactly right, yeah. That you might be able to identify, that we could then incorporate into a section under D that says, this, you know, this prohibition exists except for these locations at, you know what I mean, like that. Everything else, I mean, I thought it was really thorough. I don't know, I do think we should, because I think making the inspection annual as opposed to one time makes sense, and especially if our police department is willing to have a person certified and could actually come to your house with an appointment and say, let me see your vehicle and we'll give you your pass for this year.
Badge or sticker.
That, or badge or sticker or whatever. And secondly, I honestly think, unless I'm misreading this statute, and that's entirely possible, that the section that says the city of Brentwood additionally imposes the requirement that any low-speed vehicle be properly registered, I think that violates the actual language of this statute. You know, like I said, maybe we should just have city attorney, yeah, right, take a look at it and tell me whether I'm wrong. But this has been really good.
Dan says
And it-
that do you want to speak to that? How did you come up with this draft?
This, I converted some files that I just pulled from Clayton's, you know,
Okay.
ordinances, converted everything from a PDF to Word, so that was the framework. To answer your previous questions about golf carts, we did try to separate golf carts from low-speed vehicles. I did find Hazelwood, which City Attorney O'Keefe represents them. So Hazelwood actually has a good definition to add probably to that section. So it says, golf cart, a small battery-powered or motorized 3 to 4 wheel motor vehicle, meeting requirements of section 304.034 RSMO, that is designed and manufactured for the operation on a golf course for sporting or recreational purposes and is not capable of exceeding speeds of 20 miles per hour. So you might want to insert that in there just for better clarification that, you know, hey, a golf cart's meant for playing 9 or 18 holes. This other thing is really more or less like an electric car in the sense that it has seat belts. Because it goes on, there's another definition for low-speed vehicle, and it talks about the gross vehicle weight, and it mentions section 304.029 RSMO.
Right.
And then 49 CFR sections 571.500 through 571.3.
And it looks like that other ordinance you mentioned draws directly from the statute in terms of the golf cart definition.
Right, because Hazelwood hadn't passed theirs yet when I
Okay.
pulled this, but City Attorney O'Keefe actually put it together and it was labeled draft in 2022, so it's just
Okay.
a month or so old.
Okay. Okay, I understand.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would just, as far as the registration of these, I would look upon it just like when you go to register your car and you get a safety inspection and it would be like a certification that it's a safe vehicle, but you're not registering it.
Right, right.
So what the police would be doing is just certifying that the vehicle is roadworthy, but you're not registering the vehicle.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. So you wouldn't be in violation of that state statute, would you?
No, I don't think you would in that, than what you just described. I think that's right.
Okay.
I think you're right.
So if we called it a safety inspection.
Right,
That would
right.
satisfy
Right.
everything.
Okay. So I mentioned 304034. I'll put together a rationale from what we did, and I'll send it to you, Bola, and then maybe we can forward it on to Kevin and
Sure.
see if we can talk about it next month, and if everybody's okay, and then I'll get feedback from Dan too about adding some language with regard to where, we might try dual usage here for small stretches, Okay, all right. Is there anybody else that wants to add anything to that discussion at this point? All right. The York Village streetlight installation update. You already updated us. Okay, can you just tell me, I'm on a heavy email list from trustees and individuals. Is there any timeline here? So the easements have been put together, and
Exhibits and the descriptions, and then I'll put the rest of it. We have a
but the
form.
homeowners haven't seen them yet.
Right, because it just came in today.
Okay,
Right.
okay, but previously they've all generally agreed that.
Right, I met with them and we actually staked the location, so that's
And
how
I've
we
seen
figured
those
out where,
stakes.
yeah.
It's very encouraging to see the stakes. I
Right,
will
because it
say.
said it may shift a foot or two because of utilities, but we marked utilities in advance of putting the stake out there.
Okay,
So let's assume that the markings are correct on the underground. Again, it may vary just a foot or two, but we have a circle, I want to say it's like 6 foot diameter. So it's
Okay.
like, as long as I'm somewhere within that diameter and the base is maybe a foot,
yeah.
that we're drilling, maybe 18 inches is not much
Okay.
bigger than that.
And then once they've seen the easement and they sign off on it, is that what they have to do?
As soon as they sign off on it, I can just go ahead and schedule. I mean, I have to rent an auger, so we have to auger, then we have to form everything, pour the concrete, let that cure for about a week, then come in about a week later and then or we have to rent a lift too, because those come in two pieces. If you look at the one over at York Hills,
Yeah.
you'll see that section where there's a delineation between the bottom and top.
Yeah, that's the solar, or is it just the?
Yeah, those are all solar that we're putting in. So it's 3 more solar. I don't have to run any wires other than the wires that are inside the post, snap it together. We got the batteries, everything is there. Everything's there to assemble. So I
Okay.
feel pretty confident we'll do it in July and be done with it.
Thank you very much.
So, and then just going back to the other conversation, do we want to include anything about horns? I put everything together.
I'm gonna put it in there with a question mark as to whether it needs to be included.
Some
in that.
cities had it. I know Osage Beach and the city of St. Charles did, but most of them did not. Some of them even had like a little flag like you had when you were a little kid, like a 7-foot tall flag in it.
Train whistle.
So,
All right. We'll leave it with a question mark. Okay. 8D, which is the Brentwood Bound presentation to include a conversation with regard to ECDC and a conversation with regard to a K-9 unit. Right?
Yes.
Yes. Eric, how are you?
Doing well.
Good.
Thank you. So obviously I'm going to have Chief Cottrell and Chief Spees and even Major Hawkins maybe jump in every once in a while. But so for the last couple of months, we've been kind of talking about safety considerations in Brentwood Park. Things have been done, things that each department would like to do. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. Kind of just, as you guys all know, Brentwood Park is going to be 36 new acres of green space. So something I'm incredibly looking forward to. Will become one of the largest parks, the largest park in Brentwood, And we expect it to be regional for the amenities that are being there, the connection to Deer Creek Greenway, and even the proximity to Metrolink, good or bad, as we've been hearing tonight. And so the first thing we kind of did is kind of just put together some data for everyone. We know obviously that you guys like to see make an informed decision. So we kind of just talked about the square miles of each city. We start with the comparable city. So this is all the things that we do when we do our personnel compensation study. So it's the same cities. Square miles, access to Metrolink within a mile, the number of parks, park acreage, what the largest park would be, and that is the park acreage after that. How many patrol officers each city has. And then one of the things that we'll talk about tonight is dedicated park officers. So basically, do they have a police officer or a park ranger dedicated to one specific park? And so kind of look down at Kirkwood, they have a park ranger. His job is to rotate between all of their 13 parks. So that's what that rotating means when you see that on this slide. And whether they have a substation located within the park. So again, we just put together a lot of this data. I think Kelly's putting the presentation into board docs, so you guys will have that as well.
It's not in yet,
It's not.
and I cannot read that.
Sorry.
But I believe you.
I was trying to get in there earlier, but I couldn't edit, so I had to pass it off to Kelly. So it's a kind of a mixed bag of, how big each city is. The general themes are, we know who's located next to Metrolink. It's Clayton, it's us, it's Richmond Heights, Maplewood. Parks go somewhere between Frontenac that doesn't have any park and does not have a park system, up to, I think the highest on this page is Webster Groves. There's 20 different parks. Park acreage is kind of all over the place again, 0 to 208. And you see the largest parks, they are a mixed bag as well. AB Green is Richmond Heights' biggest park at 5 acres. And then you have Chesterfield that has the 207-acre athletic complex. So the big thing about a dedicated police officer, according to the data we have, there's none that's dedicated specifically to one park, nor are there really any substations. And so, again, I want to thank Chief Spees and Angie, or Major Hawkins. They helped me a lot with this data, getting a lot of this stuff together. We also took a look at just additional communities because we're just kind of did as much as we did. Ultimately, I just put out a listserv email to all the directors, and then Major Hawkins and Chief Speech kind of did the police side of it. So it's kind of nice. And again, this goes anywhere from, about a square mile. If you look at the counties, obviously those are going to be very large areas. Forest Park is an interesting thing because I don't think I ever realized that Forest Park is 2 square miles. So Forest Park is bigger than the city of Brentwood. I don't think I ever realized that until doing that. So I learned something on this. So again, you see the patrol officers, the dedicated park, and you kind of see Forest Park is the one that does have dedicated police officers to their park, and that obviously makes a lot of sense. And then you have places like O'Fallon that has 1 that rotates between their 8 parks. St. Peter's have 5 rotating between all of their 25 parks. And then St. Louis County has a decently large staff because they have 75 parks and 12,000 park acres. So that kind of gives you kind of a little bit of the data. Again, just, you'll see that once it gets in there. So some of the things we've already talked about, we've already put, we started putting cameras in the places. So the pavilion will have cameras. The parking lot will have a license plate reader. We're working on getting the cameras into the playground right now, and also getting data down for the Manchester Road Tunnel. So that's places that will have cameras already. We'll have a monitored fire alarm at the pavilion, so that way the fire department has everything. Door access is, something we're trying to be a little bit more conscious of. So instead of asking, begging the police department to come out and lock the doors every night, which they do so nicely for us, this will lock automatically. We'll have life sensors inside, so if someone's in this facility, we'll be notified so we can figure out what's going on and get that person out of the bathroom. And then park lighting. We're really looking at park lighting from the parking lot, which will have lights, obviously, following the GRG trail to the tunnel. Because if we're going to have events at the event lawn, we want to make sure people want to walk or bike to it, and so we want to make sure we give them a lighted route home. So much like everything else, we're looking at solar power for those kind of just trail lighting, not the big lightings that you guys were talking about in York Village. So then we kind of talked about what we might additionally want. So some of this, we'll start with the police department, and they're in no mixed order besides the fact that it's maybe cheapest to most expensive. The first is maybe the police department would like an additional vehicle, one that they can kind of leave, I believe, out at Brentwood Park or have it a presence there, kind of like what they're doing in all the neighborhoods right now. So whether there's someone in there or not, it kind of gives the visibility and convenience aspect of having there at Brentwood Park. Cost will be minimal because you just need insurance and maintenance. It's not one that's supposed to be out on the road. It is basically kind of, not to call it a dummy police car, but kind of the idea of that. Flock cameras, I knew you guys were talking about flock cameras earlier. The police department's looking at 4 additional locations for flock cameras. Brentwood at Russell, Brentwood at Pendleton, again, the parking lot entrance, and then Manchester at Breckenridge Industrial. So a lot of areas where you'll see vehicles try to access the new park. Drone, a public safety drone and training. And again, I think the biggest utilization is for a search and rescue operation. So if there's a lost child, we can get the drone up there and kind of see what's going on. Missing persons, fleeing suspects, if there are, hopefully we won't see that a lot. But we could also do some event monitoring, concerts, Brentwood days, things like that. One of these days I'll have to put a camera on it so we can get some good video from our events too. So, you know, it could be utilized for a lot of things. Police substation, one of the things we kind of talked about, you know, I think the police department would like something that's centrally located, would be visible to patrons to kind of get the people walking in the park feeling like there's the presence, the police presence there. They would like it to be equipped with electricity, internet, Wi-Fi, computer, charging docks, even medical supplies. A lot of the Wi-Fi electricity is to kind of utilize the flock camera so they can get the hits down there if they're in the building. The drone, have a computer down there, things like that to make sure that they have access to everything they need while they'll be down there. About ATV, utilized for a daily patrol on the trails, which would be a lot nicer than, you know, getting a vehicle trying to drive around the trails, which I see in other municipalities. You'd have quick access to the tunnel trails and other less traveled areas, kind of high visibility. It also, we see it being utilized again as we redevelop the Manchester corridor. It can kind of travel into that area as well and utilize a lot for public relations. Leads into the fire department ATV, which would be EMS based. It wouldn't have any fire fighting equipment on it. Again, it becomes an easier patient access and transport. Again, ease of navigating, and the fire department's looking for a way to be able to tow the boat. So they have that capability on there, whether it's for the creek or the lake that we'll have, or any other operations that they'll need with other cooperative cities. So the K9 program, which I know we'll be talking about a little bit more, but again, it's the things we've talked about before, the dog, a training vehicle, and our yearly costs to maintain with the K9 program. So it would be high visibility, so it'd kind of be a nice little PR for the new park and redevelopment areas to kind of see that K9 program kind of take off right when the park opens. And then additional police officers. So the police department would like 3 additional officers dedicated to Brentwood Park specifically to provide that public safety presence in the park. We help out with community engagement, monitoring, response, and even foot patrol in the redevelopment areas. So, you know, I know they can talk a little bit more about that as we go, but it is the idea to have those 3 officers dedicated to that park. Of course, it comes down to cost, right? And so we kind of split it up in 2 different ways, kind of the upfront capital cost. You kind of see everything listed down there. These are estimations right now, but I know the 2 chiefs have been really kind of fine-tuning those prices, so we feel pretty confident on those prices. And then the yearly operational costs, and the big one, obviously, is the 3 police officers. So when you think about salary, benefits, uniform equipment, that's really the big cost. So what we could not get, which would be utility costs for the substation, because that's just unknown at this time, and any IT costs that be associated with the substation. So that would be additional yearly operational cost. So, you know, it's a lot, and it's one thing that's hard to kind of consideration. So what we try to do is figure out ways to help out, obviously. That's our goal as department heads, to make sure, provide a problem and hopefully a solution. So the first up front is we have a few funding sources. Is one, if we want to do things sooner rather than later, there is fund balance. So the CARES Act money of 2020 and 2021, we didn't earmark that for anything, and so that just went into the general fund balance. That is money that's added to the fund balance if that's something the committee or the board wants to look at. I know the fire and police department are both have either applied for or looking at grants for the ATVs, and additionally, any other grant that comes about, the departments and as well as me, we always look to try to find additional grant opportunities. Sponsorships, if there's a sponsorship opportunity, that maybe we can look at, that's probably the lowest on the totem pole. The other one, which is kind of if we want to do it systematically, is then just kind of try to build it into the capital budget over the next few years. That's trying to get it into everything else that needs to be purchased. And in addition, we just don't know how long that would take to kind of complete it this time. We'll have a better idea if that's what we do in the budget. And so the yearly operational costs, that's another big one. And so staff identified some possible funding sources for consideration. The first is terminating the ECDC contract. So the 2022-23 cost would be $295,000. The estimated cost, projected cost of moving police to St. Louis County and fire to the Central County Fire, it's about $200,000. So that's a $95,000 saving there. There's also the possibility of utilizing Prop P funding. In 2023, there's a $88,000 surplus. It does decrease because of the staff associated with Prop P funding. So in 24, it drops down to $82,000. So we see a decrease, and we'd have to figure that out. So that leaves a shortfall of 23 of just close to $110,000. And below is kind of the information from ECDC about call for service, the change,
Right.
All that cost, things like that. So that is the nuts and bolts of the quick presentation. And obviously, I can answer questions, but more importantly, the chiefs and Major Hawkins can answer questions as well.
I'll start with you guys. Do you have any questions?
No,
Or how
I
many
just
questions do you
comment,
have?
this is really well thought through.
Yeah.
As we've done this the past year, it's been in the back of my mind that this is a major place that we're going to have to provide for, but you have such detailed ideas to cover things. I'm really impressed with it. I don't have too many questions because it's too new, but I like the ideas.
I think, one is having the conversation at Public Safety, asking to be on the agenda. We've been talking about it. It was a way for all the departments to kind of get down and sit and talk. And obviously, I'm the one up here, but obviously the chiefs did a lot of work, and Major Hawkins, I'm assuming, and Major McIntyre did a lot of work on this, and Assistant Chief Byrne. So everyone did a lot of work on this. So that's why I feel like it's well thought out, because we sat down for multiple meetings trying to flesh this out before we brought it to you.
Sonny, do you have any questions?
No, it's very comprehensive. And I guess that report will be at some point.
If you refresh, it's up there now.
Okay,
Okay.
but I'm not going to read it while
Okay.
I'm sitting here on
I
the
have
dais.
I have a
but-
few
Move over
questions.
one seat. It's easier from here.
So I'll start with the most recent, kind of go in reverse order from where I saw them. If we did move to two separate dispatch, one for fire and one for our police department, does that create problems in terms of interdepartmental communication?
I can, excuse me, I can speak for the police department. I don't anticipate that it would. Just to give a little scope of what you're looking at tonight, when BOLA came to us and we started looking at the Brentwood bound perspective from safety and security from the police department side, what you see here today is what we, it's kind of like, hey, you can do what you want. This is the best path that we see. But then, of course, BOLA said, try and find a way to fund it.
Oh, yeah.
We're not in a rush. Paul Jokers is sitting here, and I'll speak to this with him sitting here. He's the director over there at ECDC. We are happy with the service of ECDC, but this is real simple to me as the chief here. This park area and the upcoming business district is vital, not only in terms of how much money we spent on it, but really the future of the city is tied to it.
So I have two other questions that are kind of related to the ECDC component of this. If we were to move away from ECDC, wouldn't that incur, wouldn't the city have to incur some additional costs for jail?
No, not necessarily. I think there was an article in the paper today that Shrewsbury's going to St. Anne's. Their cost is very similar to what we're currently paying at Richmond Heights.
Okay. And we
Much
pay
less
that,
than-
we pay that in addition to the E ECDC?
That's, yeah.
Money.
ECDC dispatching is a different entity in funding than
Okay.
what we pay for prisoner
Oh, for some
conveyance
reason I had in
and
my mind
housing.
that it was all tied up together. Okay.
Different line items in the budget.
Okay. Then the other question I had with regard to the police part of it is, as we were breaking out the sort of the different costs, and I really like the fact that you broke that out. I really appreciate you doing that. Not only on the equipment side, I know the canine was part of the equipment, but on the personnel side as well. And with regard to the canine, you had mentioned that there were opportunities, not with the canine specifically, but with other elements of this that could be funded through grants, specifically the vehicles, I think. Major Hawkins, or are you familiar with the 10-8 Foundation?
I've heard of it, I'm not familiar with it, though.
So only reason I know about it is they were on KMOV the other day because the St. Louis Fire Department had just acquired 4 rescue canines to augment their service throughout the city. And their service was basically, they have 2 cadaver dogs and 2 live dogs. And those dogs were trained, as you might expect, for rescue situations, to identify where people had, perished in a fire or in a building collapse or whatever, and then others that they would perform rescue. And with them was a guy from this foundation called the 10-8 Foundation. And apparently 10-8 refers to a police code for being in service, and that's where they take their title from. And they indicate that they can help with identifying dogs for purchase, helping to fund that purchase and things like that. I just didn't know, just as a general idea. Would the building, the building that's pictured, the substation, would that be designed in your mind to be something that could be trailerable and movable, or would you want it to be permanently affixed to a particular location?
The ones that we looked at were permanent. They're structures that are prefab that you can put up. I think Dan's folks would be more than capable of putting them up. And really, I think it's important to note that building, and really all of the equipment, from the drone to all of these things that are in this application to you, are predicated upon having police officers to use them and be there. And when we ask for 3 policemen, what you have to understand is this area, especially when the nightlife kicks off in a couple of years, but generally speaking, right now, this park area is going to be open every day, all day long. In order to have 1 officer at that park, we need 3 cops with days off, vacations. They're going to be working 8-hour shifts. So I just wanted to clarify that it sounds like a lot to have 3 policemen dedicated to the park area, but in reality, you're going to have 1 officer there just by schedule throughout the day. So it's not 3 policemen that are there together, it's 1, because they're working shifts. It's what, Eric, they open at sunrise to sunset, right? So right now, you're going to be there from 6 to 10 o'clock.
And so my last question about all of this, the relationship back and forth was, oh, shoot, I just forgot it. It had to do with oh, shoot. I guess the only other question I had that I can recall at this moment in time is to ask, and I appreciate you being here tonight from ECDC. Can you tell us whether you anticipate, or what the formula is for anticipating what the cost going forward with the loss of Shrewsbury might mean for the city of Brentwood?
Yes, sir, not a problem at all. Well, my name is Paul Jokerst. I am the Executive Director for East Central Dispatch Center. I've been with ECDC for 3 years now. Before that, I had a long public safety history as well. I started off as a dispatcher, actually. I became a patrolman in St. Charles, a sergeant, a park ranger, actually, as well. And then ended my law enforcement career as a chief of police before taking on this job. The way the formula calculates for ECDC, I mean, I'm bound by my bylaws, which was created by the original board of directors, which are city managers. And it's been recently revoted to maintain it that way for now, so that's where I'm bound to do. How we calculate calls for service is, ECDC itself is on a physical July 1 budget for my budget. The calls for service, however, are calculated by the previous 2 years' average calls for service, with approximately 4 natures being eliminated that we don't bill for. So we total that number, and whatever that total average is, whatever, for example, City of Brentwood's average is for that 2 years, that same percentage is then applied to the budget. That's, like I said, that's how it's done right now.
So is that a zero-sum proposition? In other words, you take what your costs are gonna be or what you anticipate them to be, and it's simply at some point determined that if the cost is $1 million, it's divided on a percentage of use between the communities that subscribe to ECDC?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, so,
For example, I had for my next budget, I had a $2.4 million budget for ECDC.
so if,
That same percentage is applied to that budget.
so if the subtraction of Shrewsbury means that the overall number of calls for service goes down, our maintaining the same number of calls for service means we have a bigger percentage of your 100%, I would imagine. That's gotta be true.
And each city is fluctuating. The last couple of years, Brentwood has actually gone down if I'm not mistaken.
We're highly safe
A
and efficient.
little bit down in the calls for service. Now, past COVID, I think it's coming back up. In the way the calculation is done, because the board has chosen and the bylaws are clear on doing it by calls for service, yes, the loss of Shrewsbury, or, for example, Richmond Heights went up considerably. Directly affects everybody because it's based on calls for service.
Because Richmond Heights would in that time experience represent a higher percentage and therefore would be charged a higher fee.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean, of the departments going into the next fiscal year, it's 7 agencies. Brentwood is actually number 5. So those are 4 agencies that are a little bit bigger, busier, and higher call volume than you.
Okay. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for him with regard to?
Oh, I don't know necessarily. I mean, if we didn't use ECDC, are you comfortable with what we would use? I mean, to me, I don't think that cost should necessarily be for safety. If this is what makes you be able to do your jobs,
You want to address that to
best, then
Chief Spees or Chief Cottrell?
When we were challenged with coming up with the security plan and challenged with trying to help the city fund what we are asking for Brentwood Bound, this was the only place I could go to in my budget in the police department. We don't have any other place to go. There's no other, and Bo and I have talked about this. There's no fluff in the police department budget. This isn't fluff. They do a good job. We're happy with the service we receive. Does St. Louis County provide a good dispatch? Sir, yeah, they do. And I think we'd be okay and fine with St. Louis County. Again, from my perspective, if you had to say what is more important to the city of Brentwood and why I would choose to go away from ECDC, I think we need this program in our new park and entertainment district. I think it's that important. Do I want to leave ECDC? No, they do a good job for us. If that answers.
Well, so I interpreted part of that question to mean, do you see any drop-off in the technical ability of the dispatch in terms of the equipment that they use as opposed to ECDC?
No, what you lose is that touch. I mean, that Paul's very responsive to us. So a little bit of a touch thing, if that makes sense.
Sure.
St. Louis County's out in St. Louis County EOC Center, and they're a big operation. They dispatch for a lot of cities, including themselves. So it's really boils down to that little feel and being able to touch feel, as opposed to a bigger organization that'd be dispatching for us. But the equipment and the CAD and all of the processes is very good. St. Louis County's good at what they do.
Would the response time vary between an ECDC call and a county call response?
It shouldn't, as 911 fields the call. And really, it depends on how busy the dispatch, and Paul could speak to this better than I could probably, but it depends on how busy they are. It depends on how many cars are in service. There are factors that create the process there, but county doing it shouldn't affect it at all, really. I don't see where it would.
Thank you.
The only thing I would say on that, I back St. Louis County. I got a lot of friends that work there as well, and Chief Spees is correct. If that decision be made, the 911 would go to St. Louis County and it would go there. the very slight delay that you would see versus being in a center like ECDC or ECDC and splitting it. Once the 911 is answered there, then it has to be transferred to Central County to where that would be taken. And it would be minimal, I'll admit that, but there will be a delay in transferring to 911. And under our current program of billing, I mean, fire department benefits tremendously by being billed for calls for service. I mean, for the upcoming budget, the fire department cost for us is $25,000. The remainder is police departments because it's calls for service. So that shows you how much it can fluctuate.
You guys have any other questions?
I have a question about the canine program. What kind of crime fighting? I mean, was this dog? I mean, when I think of a dog, I think of the bomb dog at the courthouse, or I think of an attack dog, or I think of a cadaver dog looking for a body. I mean,
Primarily, our dog would be a person search dog. So think small kids that get lost in any environment in Brentwood. If you have an elderly person that's missing from a location, they're great for those kind of finds. So Major Hawkins and I talk about this a lot. Is there a takedown or physical element to this canine where it can actually be aggressive? I tend to say I don't lean that way. I can be persuaded based on based on what I'm hearing, but so don't think of it necessarily as an attack dog or a dog that an officer will cut loose onto a suspect who's running, tackle them, and forcibly stop them. We could go in that direction because these dogs are you're able to train them how you want them to act. And but there's another side to this canine program I think is hugely important, and that's the public relations side. And that's a piece that all of the kids love these dogs. And you can see it. I've been around canines almost my entire police career. They are a really good touch to the community. And down in that park area, they would be an exceptional representation for our department and our city, just to the people that come through the park. So there's high value, in my opinion, to us having a dog. In the middle of the night, if we have 4 guys bail out of a car and they were breaking in cars in Brentwood Forest, that officer is getting out of bed immediately and driving to the scene and deploying the dog. We just had one last week, exact same scenario, and the guys got away. That dog will likely find people that bail out of cars for us. They're very good at that. So that would be an application as well. They don't necessarily physically take the guys down, but they will direct the officers to them, if that makes sense.
I have some more questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what do you do now without a dog? I mean, is there, because I see those county cars driving around, that have,
Yeah, and the honest truth is, county's not coming here typically to assist us. Kirkwood's got a dog that will come if he's working. We don't get much assistance outside of the Kirkwood dog, though. The answer to your question is that we have as many officers on foot as we can looking, and it's not real effective. These dogs will find people hiding under cars in the woods. They do things we can't do, and it's not even close.
I want to interject here just for a second. Didn't we have an early morning call for service on one of the roads off of McKnight Road near Tillis? It might even been Tillis, where the suspect took to hiding underneath a vehicle, and it took our officers an additional amount of time to figure out where he was because he had covered himself back up with leaves and had himself under the car. Is that a situation where a dog might have been effective?
Hugely effective, and it also makes it much safer for our cops because they know the guys there. Then they dunced on that guy,
Yeah.
and it can be very dangerous if the guy doesn't want to go to prison. So we've had other guys that we found hiding in backs of basements in Brentwood. We had a guy the other day that was hiding in a Johnny on the spot after he stole a cell phone, ran from actually was a strong arm robbery guy. So those are people that these dogs will assist us with on a regular basis. That's outside the scope of them patrolling and being in the park and business district. And I mean, if you look 2, 3, 4 years down the road, when we really start having if we have a bar area and we have a restaurant area and a nice area, that dog's great assistant. I mean, people just like seeing them anyway, generally. But it makes them feel much safer as well. They can be a high-value addition to the police department. The downside is you got to dedicate a policeman to it. It's a 24-hour-a-day job for that officer to care for that dog. So there's a cost to doing the business, and that officer has to have an equipped vehicle that has canine-equipped things in the car. Door pops that will open, air conditioning that won't go off, things like that they build into a police canine vehicle now that we would have to build that car. So there's considerable costs to the program.
Would a dog, so that you characterize it as a search and rescue, is that kind of,
Depends on
for
who
lack of a
wins.
better phrase, I mean,
Depends on
you
who
know,
wins
or
the war
Cujo,
here.
right, you know, that, you know, but is that kind, I mean, I have a good friend of mine who works for Duo Dogs that train service animals, and,
Right.
you know, I get a earful of like, you train certain dogs to do certain things, like, would a dog like that be amenable to having kids pet them, or is it like, don't touch me, I'm working, kind of
100%.
thing?
They're, my cousin's a canine officer in St. Charles County for their police department, and she has a bloodhound. And it couldn't be a sweeter dog, but it has some outstanding saves. Old people, kids, suspects. Dog's great. But in a social setting, she's fantastic. So, and that's a bloodhound. There's other breeds.
And I'll add to that too, just as a comparison. For example, in St. Louis City, we dealt a lot with German Shepherds and Malinois, and those are the aggressive-looking dogs, and they were trained to be bite dogs. And so they would go out and they would grab people by the arms or the legs if they were hiding and things of that nature. And they could search with their smell as well, but that's not really the kind of dog that we were leaning towards. It does have an appearance of being really aggressive, and both breeds of dogs kind of lean towards being a little jumpy. We had some officers bitten in the city by the canine, who were German Shepherds, et cetera. But we would lean towards more like a lab or a bloodhound or something like that.
Or
That has a
imposing
great.
golden doodle.
Oh my gosh, stop it! That would be amazing. Basset hound. I don't know. Anyways, something that does have just kind of traditionally that disposition to do really well in crowds and really well with kids, but has just an amazing sniffer as well. So.
Can I follow that up? Would a officer with a canine posted by Metrolink stop some people from getting off Metrolink and turning around and going back?
They're so bold these days, ma'am. I don't think so. I just don't think so. They don't. No, I don't think it would. Especially a cuddly Labrador. They're probably
Oh,
not
they'll
gonna
lick
care.
your face. They're not going to come up and do anything to you.
Right.
But they can certainly track them back near Metrolink, because we chase a lot of people from Metrolink. A lot. Did it today. So, you know, they run along the tracks. They try and hide in our retail area from Metrolink. Those are applications for the dog, for sure.
See that?
Yes.
Anything else? I'm sorry.
One more
Okay.
question.
Yeah, please.
You haven't mentioned bicycles, but didn't you have a couple officers on bicycles, and would they work in the park?
That would definitely be incorporated in, if we get this far for this plan, that's definitely a big piece of the, you know, we have the ATV. Or if we get the ATV, that would be used. But definitely it would be a bike officer, you know, at least, they're all gonna be trained for a bike. There'll be a bike there if we get the shed. That's where all these like interconnected parts are, right? So, but to answer your question, my expectation would be they'll be on that bike a lot. I can't say they'll be on there every day, all day long, but there would definitely be bike patrols in that area, yes. And then when the business district opens, that's another great application. Both foot beats and the bike would be great ways to protect that area.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Eric. That was great. Under new business, we have the scooter permit. This is just a reprint of a resolution that we passed, correct? This is a reprint of the sharing agreement that had to do with the registration deployment of bird scooters within a number of communities, not just Brentwood. And the only reason I added it, or I asked that it be added, was to somehow incorporate it into this whole conversation with regard to slow-moving vehicles and this notion of public safety. And I certainly don't think we have to do anything tonight. And I was just wondering if the committee would start to think about whether or not, what Brentwood's position on scooters would be in terms of where can they be operated? Can they be operated in the city at all? Would we want to prohibit them as other communities have done recently? Would we want to draft legislation that restricted them or, you know, or directed them to certain areas? Steve, do you have any thoughts on this, or does anybody have any thoughts?
I attended the Public Works Committee meeting where they took this up, and they didn't look too enthusiastic about it. They did kind of punt it, if Bola wants to correct me, I believe they kind of punted it to public safety.
Not Ways and Means.
Yeah, I
But,
quit,
you know,
I gotta quit missing meetings.
Yeah. I mean, these things, I don't think they're really a form of transportation. I think they're entertainment or toys. And I think they're just going to be used by kids as toys. And if I remember correctly with my kids, I was always stumbling over the toys. So I just do not, for our small community, I just don't see the benefit of these whatsoever. It's just my comment.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I can't see the point of using them to get from A to B here in Brentwood. It's not a destination sort of thing. I'm having trouble calling this up, but when we write this, can we be sure that we have only the scooters in it? At some point, e-bikes were combined with this. Can we take e-bikes out and make that a separate issue, if it's an issue, but at least for the scooters, keep
think
it
that's a good
only
call.
scooters?
Okay. So, all right. Yes, to answer your question.
The other point is, in the city and some other places, as these things become damaged or whatever, I've seen places where they're just piled up. In an alley between buildings, you've got 6 dead scooters, and they sit there. The company never comes and gets them. I'd like to see some sort of end to this if this becomes an issue with an
So if you look at
accumulation
the permit request we passed, that resolution, it has a lot in there about the obligation of the organization, a bird, to pick up and redeploy and to make sure that they're in good working order, like on a daily basis almost. Now, whether they do it or not, I mean, that's part of the agreement.
That's theoretical, so.
It is theoretical,
It's,
but that's a good point. Okay, well, thank you for that. Chief Cottrell. Okay.
Part of a 4-city group. And so some of the other cities, we were taking the lead in doing the review and doing the, exactly.
Right.
So they have created restrictions within their communities on where the scooters can be placed. And we've kind of followed the same pattern, all the cities that are in this agreement. So Eric has developed the list, and that's included in board docs. So we've kind of postponed the distribution implementation date because the committees wanted to discuss this further.
What is the distribution and implementation?
So it was going to be, what, 2 weeks ago? Then we pushed it to the week of June 20th. So now we'll be pushing it.
Right now,
Possibly.
we have them launching July 11th. Now, I'll tell you that Clayton is allowing a soft launch within their city and their city only. So they're geofencing any place outside of Clayton with 10 scooters beginning Monday. But right now,
With Bird?
yes,
And Bird is going to distribute scooters in the city of Clayton.
yes.
I think the criteria is streets where the speed limit is under 25. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's very similar to kind of what I had put in board docs of some restrictions that staff, and we run it by the police department as well, that we would see if we wanted to if we wanted to have specific restrictions.
Did you, we have a distribution location already identified? Or a number of locations identified already?
Not yet, because we are waiting to see the kind of the conversation.
Discussion here.
And whether or not if we wanted to kind of entertain any of these restrictions, so.
Did you provide, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
My
in-
board docs is like is anyone having trouble with?
Have you refreshed?
Yes, and I even turned my iPad on and off.
It's
Mine just came
listed
on. I didn't get it
under,
first, and now it's clicked, so.
where is it? It's called Bird Ride Inc. restrictions. It's the second to the bottom on the left-hand side of my board docs.
Okay, it's a third of the bottom on me, but,
The
okay.
bird ride restrictions.
And so I basically took the lead from, other places that doing it, not only Clayton, Maplewood, Richmond Heights, and the city of St. Louis, but even like Columbia, Warrensburg, Joplin, Kansas City, all the places in Missouri that have a contract with Bird Scooters. So very similar to kind of the golf cart conversation you guys were having earlier, making sure they're on a place that's 25 miles an hour or lower, restricted from park trails, except for, the purpose that some people see is for transportation in different places. So the Maple Trail is a trail that runs basically from Strassner to Rogers Parkway. And the idea is getting you from Manchester Road to Strassner, which gets you into the Promenade, the Point, the Square, kind of those areas as well. But we would want to reduce the speed if we did that.
Okay, and so the other thing I think we should do that it's not even touched on here, but maybe it would be in a different document, would be, as I understand the agreement, when I read the agreement that was passed previously, the shared agreement, it talked about daily updates from the company, that they would switch out vehicles that weren't working, they would, pull vehicles that needed repair, whatever. I also understood that they would honor a distribution location. And are we gonna, what I don't wanna see, and this is just me personally, but what I really don't wanna see is just allowing them to put them on any sidewalk or any area, in front of Walgreens, in front of where, you know what I mean? I'd wanna think about it and say, you can put them here. Now, where they end up, obviously, is another function of the way they're being used, right?
Right,
But-
and that was my question, whether we can identify places where we want them to start. We can easily do that. I think you'd really look at places like,
Rec center.
the rec center or the promenade or, some places like that. And
Right.
if you wanted to, while it's a dockless program, you can geofence the location you want them parked to. Now, that becomes more difficult if you're saying that you want specific places for them to wind up at the end, then that kind of limits the usage of having them to begin with because, but the reason you see some of that stuff that's not in here is because it is in the permit requirements. So yes, there's a requirement that they have 3 vendors their only jobs to go and service bird scooters and making sure they're following the permit requirements that we have listed out in our permits.
I don't remember that. Does that mean that they would not be permitted to put them in front of a business on the business property? And I'm thinking of Brentwood Forest with our common ground. I don't want to see scooters littered all over the landscape, and I'm sure others wouldn't.
Yeah, the easier way is to kind of geofence where they're not allowed. And so what happens is if you take a scooter within a place that has been geofenced off, it will continue to charge you the fee, the hourly minute fee or whatever, until you actually remove it from that location.
And how
Like a
would,
siren go
how would
off,
the
or-
rider know that?
They identify it within the screen. And also, if you enter a geofence location, you can get put to the point where you actually reduce and stop the scooter as well. So if you go into the area, if you talk about Brentwood Forest particularly, if they get into any of that area, the scooter will stop and you actually have to turn around to get out of it, or you'll just keep charging you until, assuming there's a max fee, but.
Let me ask this, Steve, do you guys want to talk about trying to form some kind of restrictions, or what are you leaning towards wanting to do for recommendation to the Board of Aldermen?
I'm tired.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry.
You're running a meeting that was longer than the Board of Alderman meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, I can, I mean, I looked at the resolution, it passed. But yeah, like, is there a permitted use versus like having them strewn on the streets? I mean, where does, surely there are restrictions that have probably found a consensus somewhere, that someone's homework we can cheat off of.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to highlight some of it. Part of the idea of the permit is they have to be set up. You can't just leave them on the ground. You can't throw them into a lake, because, well, you could, but then bird scooter will know that and they have to come out and get it. It can't be in, within 5 feet of a right away, like a sidewalk, or not a sidewalk, like a street or a driveway or things like that. So there's the requirements of how you can park them. If someone wants to break it into or take it into their driveway in their backyard, to be able to use it the next day, I believe it allows that. Because that's now private property instead of the right of way. So.
And
It's,
I'm assuming it wouldn't be allowed on our trail system. I mean,
Yeah, that's a good question. Should we, would
No.
we restrict it?
No,
Right.
not on our trails, please. I can see people with a stroller coming and somebody with a scooter coming behind and knocking over one of, it just,
but is that all that different from an electric bike?
yes. Scooters are dangerous. I was gonna ask Chief Cottrell, have you talked to other fire departments where they've had these about the amount of transport that has to be done with?
No, I have not. Regionally, we've not had that discussion as far as chiefs go. The only conversation that I've seen on the national level is out of New York City, and some restrictions that are being handed out because of the mass charging of these at night in areas that are not safe for that. So they will stack several in an unsafe manner, and that they've had problems. So that's really on the fire service radar right now.
I have heard, from what I've been reading, ERs can be swamped with this, and it's not just adults who aren't prepared for the strength of it or how to ride. It's kids being kids, and they don't sit and they're not going to read a bunch of rules about where they should go or not. They do what kids do. So this opens a whole can of worms, I think, has more potential dangers for drivers, the riders and pedestrians around them that haven't been thought through real well.
We ask staff if they would be willing to, for the next meeting, I know that's the end of July, but to put together a potential resolution that would, or ordinance, I guess would be an ordinance, that would restrict. I mean, if the answer is we're gonna just prohibit altogether, that would be easy to write. And that may be where the discussion goes. But if we had an ordinance that restricted usage and restricted distribution using the geofence. And I'm familiar with that on golf courses. You can drive a golf cart, and if it says, you're on cart path only on this hole, and you try to drive onto the fairway, the thing just shuts down. And it's a similar GPS activation, right? Yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, so now, Chief Cottrell.
Gonna take your weariness and your tired away, because this is pure excitement, re-energized. I'll do my best. In all seriousness, I'm very excited to be standing here presenting this. We have worked hard for several months to get to this point, and we are confident we have a plan that is just built for Brentwood. It's inclusive of our residents, it's inclusive of the schools, the businesses, and the employees. And so much of this information came from our people. That's what really makes me really proud. So to start with the engagement process, where did we start? How did we start? And before I jump any further, I was really hoping Assistant Chief Bernie would be here giving this presentation. This is his forte. This would not be at this stage without his work. He has done several of these, he's reviewed several of these, and he's been very instrumental in this. So I certainly give my props to him.
Is there something that's time sensitive with this?
No, sir.
Do you want to wait until July to let
it's
him,
due?
give him an opportunity to do the presentation? I don't want to, I mean.
No.
You
Yes,
just
sir.
suggested-
I would absolutely yield that. It has no impact on our operations or budget process.
Because I'd like to give it its due as
Yeah,
well.
I mean,
Understood. No problem. Thank you.
Okay.
give it the respect it deserves.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
But you're talking to us about the cardiac monitor, though?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I
Good.
have that right here. So I have a memo created for cardiac monitor. This is part of our capital budget for 2022. We reached out to our vendor, Stryker representative for the St. Louis region. They provided a price based off the National Association of State Procurement Officials bidding contract agreement. And so this is a state contract. We are trading in, and this actually shocks me, a 2001 model. They can no longer service it. They can no longer update it. It's well beyond its useful life.
I don't have computers that can last that
I
long.
understand. Yes. So the trade-in value is what drove it over our budgeted amount by $543. We budgeted $32,000 for this. The purchase price would be $32,543.09. I am requesting a motion to approve this. It would be ordered now and not delivered until after the first of the year. Stryker will give us a unit in the meantime to utilize.
Given the size of this purchase, is it required to go to the Board of Aldermen?
On the, correct.
To be on the warrant
yes.
list? Can I have a motion, please, to approve the purchase of a new cardiac monitor in the amount of $32,543.09?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Roll call, please.
Chairman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
You
I mean Lockmiller,
There you
sorry.
go.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Chief. The K-9 update was already done. We do have citizen comments. I don't see anybody in the audience. Is there anybody online who wishes to comment?
No, sir.
Hearing no comments and having no other business before us, I declare this meeting